Good Tuesday morning to everybody. My name is Matt with the National Tile Contractors Association. If you want to gather in, we're going to go ahead and get started. This morning we are talking about handles for tile. And you say, well, what's a handle for tile? Well, that's the whole goal of this next couple minutes is to explain exactly what I mean when I say handles for tile. We're talking a lot of suction cups and things that help us carry and move and make adjustments within a tile. And so I've got a whole bunch of different options up here, and I want to kind of walk through those. And we've got some different tiles, and to help me do that today, I've got my partner in crime, Mark Heinlein, also with the National Tile Contractors Association, and we've also got our friend Alex from Portland, Oregon. He's a contractor, and he's been jumping in, helping us out as well. So let's get started on some of this, but we've got a wide array of tile, and I think the best way to go about this, Mark, is to maybe go smallest to biggest.
Sounds good, Matt.
Does that work for you?
Yeah.
So this week we're talking about safety, and well, how does safety tie in with handles with tile? Well, us as tile people, we do a lot of lifting, and tile's not light, right? And so we're talking. The way I'm thinking about this is also the ergonomics of tile. And if you've been setting tile for a while, probably like me, your wrist, your fingers, your hands, they kind of look like this, right? You're all jammed up, and some of that has to do with the fact that you didn't lift properly and you didn't have something to hold on to. And so some of that's what we're talking about today. I've got a small piece of glass tile, right? And maybe we're installing this on a backsplash, Mark. Can you kind of envision yourself installing that on a backsplash? But what happens when you're working all day long, that phone starts ringing. You set that piece of glass, or you haven't finished making those final adjustments, a spacer falls out, whatever it might be, it's hard to, you don't want to stick a knife in that grout joint or a screwdriver in that grout joint. Now you're going to chip the glass. Well, how about this as a solution, Mark? We've got one of the smallest suction cups I've ever seen. It's a little 2.5 inch suction cup. We can fine tune, we can make some really small adjustments. Easy. And obviously that tile's small enough that we're not worried about the weight, but it's a convenience thing. It's a convenience tool to help us just move some small stuff around. So we get into other bigger suction cups. That's going to work great. We get into some different suction cups like this. You guys are all familiar with these. And we look at this one. We pump this up. It'll grab hold, and it's going to hold quite a bit of weight. But with this particular one, we don't know how much it's holding or what the pressure is on that. So other versions of this also come with a gauge. And if it's losing pressure, we at least have a little warning sign to know when that pressure is coming down. And so with suction cups, just like any tool, or even I kind of like to think about it as a car, right? James, if you need a work vehicle, you can get to work in a two-door Toyota. But if you got to haul 2 pallets of tile, you better go with a 350. You're going to have to spend some money for that, right? But the two-door Toyota will get the job done too. So what's the goal? And that's with any tool, you got to do your research. And all of the different manufacturers up here, they've got the base model and they got that F350 model too. So that's another one. And then we can step up to something maybe like this. And this one not only has the dial on it, but it's battery operated, it's electronic, and I'm not doing any pumping. So no more of this all day long. And if it starts to lose pressure, if that dial goes down, it turns itself back on. So I don't have to worry about that suction cup ever coming loose. And you can see it right here, 165, 62, it jumped back up to 200. So it tells me exactly what it's holding. And I can shake it a little bit and the numbers drop and I can hear it. Hard for you guys to hear it. I can hear it and I can feel it turn back on when I shake it. But this is still not a real big tile. I can pick this up. I can do this, and it's no problem for me to handle this, right? But as we get into some bigger tile, Mark, you saw what I just did, right?
I did.
Go ahead and do the same thing with that for us. Flip it around and lift it up and down.
With this one here?
No, with your hands.
Oh, with my hands.
With your hands.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah. I can work this one. You betcha.
Are you going to be able to do that for 10 hours a day?
With these pipes?
That's kind of what I was getting at. So if we get a handle for that tile, it's going to be a lot easier for you to pick it up. So let's go ahead and switch this and go ahead and put it on there. But Mark, I notice you're about to do something wrong.
Ooh.
Talking about safety, right? Before we ever stick that suction cup to that tile, we need to wipe down the tile, wipe down the suction cup. Any little bit of dust is going to be a bond breaker between the two. So we want to be extra careful that we're working clean. We want to take care of our tools. We don't have thin set all over the tile, all over the back of the suction cup. The last thing you want to be doing is walking around using that handle and it falls on your toe. That's a bad day. And who knows what else it's going to break. So that's, Mark didn't look at how to operate that apparently.
Yeah.
He's lost over there.
Yeah. Alex.
Alex, that's why we got Alex with us.
Thanks, Alex.
There we go. All right, Alex, you pick it up because I don't trust Mark anymore with that one. There we go. Okay, so that's going to hold. Now, Alex, flip that over so everybody can see. We got a nice smooth tile, heavy tile, going to be a little bit harder to work with without a handle. And I actually installed that exact tile a couple months back, and I used a handle, and it made it quite convenient for when I'm stretching, trying to drop a tile in the back of a closet, things like that. Now, that tile is a smooth finish. Mark, I'm going to pass this one over to you. Hold that. Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
Wow.
And if anybody from DW Sanders was in the audience, they're pretty familiar with that tile because it was installed at the Outdoor Oasis over there. They had some handles to help them do it. And we're going to dust it off, but not only is that a heavy tile, it's also textured. So when we're talking suction cups, handles for tile, there's a suction cup or the right tool for every job. So how much are we picking up? And guys, that might work, but I'm gonna pass you this one. How about that, Alex? This right here, I think that we know we're safe, right? We don't want to push the limits. Now, James might load down his two-door Toyota with half a pallet of tile, but he might pay the price for it too. So let's make sure we got the right tool for the job and we're not going to extend the limits of the handles that we're using. So now go ahead, Mark, and just rep that for me if you would.
Now we're going to have Alex rep
go ahead and rep that for us. Make sure that hand, go ahead, Alex, up and down. There, okay. So some of the suction cups are battery operated like that. Others are pump. Then we've got ones with levers. Real simple, up and down. We can go ahead and adjust those just like that and they work. But one of the things when you're shopping for suction cups and handles for tile that we're looking at, I'm looking at the quality of the rubber, the different kinds of rubber. And then if you look on the bottom, Mark, pass me that little one right there. Yep, any of those. You see that there's nothing on the back of this. It's just plain rubber, right? But if I show you this one has 1, 2, 3 rings around the outside. And so that's allowing us to seal off a little bit different. It's a different type of seal than this is. If this seal breaks, that tile's dropping off of this little handle. Well, if one of these seals break, I have 2 backup seals. So if over time wear and tear on the suction cup, you might want more than 1 seal, which that's all this is. So that's one of the things that I'm looking for as we are shopping for handles with tile. Mark?
Hey, Matt, I noticed something. Can I interject something here?
I think you already have.
Thanks. So as we're working with these, I've noticed that a lot of these suction cups have a cover on them.
Yes.
And you know, I noticed that we're kind of picking them up, taking off the cover and putting it back on. Why do we bother doing that?
That goes back to the taking care of your tools and protecting them from any damage. We've got a nice carpeted stage here, but I don't think that's what any of our job sites look like. We're dealing with rough floors, they're dusty, they're dirty. So we want to either set them upside down like I noticed you did with the one that didn't have a cover right here. Right. And then if it's got a cover, put it back on or put it right back in the box, close the box so that the box doesn't get covered in dust as well. So those are all maintenance things, and taking care of your tools is really where that comes into play. Mark, we have that big tile back there. Show us one more option. I saw this the other day, and it reminded me of working new construction and seeing the brick masons working outside. That's what I thought it was originally, and I inquired about it, and it's actually for tile. And so there's another type of handle. So Mark, just put that over top of there, nice and straight, and lift straight up. That's it. And then when you set it down, it loosens back up and you can take it right off. So Mark, I'm gonna challenge you here. I introduced a new tool to Mark earlier today. Let's play with these 18 by 18s right here for a second. And let's just imagine that these are much bigger tiles. Here's another version. It's a suction cup. It's got the covers on it. We'll get rid of this. But what you will notice is it's 2 suction cups, and these are designed, I'm gonna let you connect that, Mark. It's designed to push and pull tiles together. And so if you're dealing with tiles that are 4 foot by 8 foot, 5 foot by 10 foot, 6 foot by 12 foot, I think is probably the biggest one on the market today, you're not gonna be able to just push and pull. You might need some mechanical help with that. And so Mark is getting that situated, dusting it off. And Alex, if you would, we've got a bucket of thin set in the back that is slaking right now. Alex, would you go ahead and go back there and spin that one time for me and bring that on out here to the stage, please. So if we set 2 pieces, and these are 5 foot by 10 foot tiles, we got to pull them together. I've seen guys doing the old jump trying to get them together. That's not a good idea. I just saw James cringe a little bit with that one. We got to get them to move. Well, here's an option for that. Get those suction cups connected, and then with a turn, they're on there. That's pretty good. Let's turn that down a little bit, and this down a little bit. There we go. So we can crank on this lever right here, and go ahead and pull those together, Mark. We want a 3/16 grout joint. That's my favorite grout joint, 3/16. So we're gonna pull those together, get them where we want them, and then we've also got some adjustment to help us fine tune the height and any lippage that we might have between the tiles. And that's what these levers on the top are for. Once Mark gets it exactly close to where we want it, 3/16, Mark, make sure you take out that lippage there. Let's adjust those up and down, making some final tweaks. So another tool and another option, and depending on what the size of the tile is and the challenge that you're up against, this might be a great tool to have in your toolbox. They also make another version that I have seen of a tool just like this, multiple suction cups. And let's take this loose so I can explain this. It's the same concept of this, push and pull with this, up and down with that, except the other version that I have seen has a hinge in the middle. So if you're doing wrapping an outside corner, you can hinge a wall and it can help you adjust some things. Maybe you leave it on there for an hour or two just as your thin set sets up a little bit. But then we want to always make sure that we don't leave a suction cup on the tile long term. So we don't know what that suction cup, the rubber, is going to do to maybe a stone. Maybe you're setting stone. We don't want to have a black ring on our tile or stain a piece of porcelain or anything like that. So we want to be careful when we're using them not to leave the suction cups on there long term. Mark, I'm going to have you, we're going to set a 24 by 48. You good with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that, Matt.
I'm going to pass you a bucket of water.
All right.
And I'm going to let you go to work. And we're going to spread some thin set. And then we'll use some handles here in a minute. And Alex, if you would pass me this texture tile right there, please. So Mark, I want to make sure before you get started, I know it's been a while maybe for you. You've been sitting at a desk and not spreading thin set lately.
I can type pretty good.
You can type pretty good. I want to make sure that you wipe this board down. It's dusty.
Okay.
So take your sponge, get it damp, and we're doing two things. We're getting the dust off of the surface, and then we're also giving this thirsty substrate a drink. So cement board, fiber cement board, concrete, wood, all of these different substrates are very thirsty, and if we don't give them a little drink of water, it's gonna pull that moisture out of our thin set, causing it to dry too fast. So Mark's getting the dust off, but he's also giving it a drink of water. While he does that, I want you to see, can everybody see how textured that is, right? And I've been talking about there's a tool for every job. I was actually kind of a little bit surprised, but the other day I could do this on the floor. Let's see if it'll grab. There it is. It's running right now. Yep, you can hear it. My green light's on, that means it's running. So even a tile with that much, go ahead and feel how it's pretty deep and it will hold it. And so I installed a version of this a couple years ago, except it was like 1 by 48. And man, do I wish I had a handle for some of that. Trying to embed that and collapse my ridges, really tough to push on and pull on. Okay, so you got that dampened down, Mark. Why don't you go ahead and put some thin set on the board, and we're gonna key it in first. That's the first step. And when I say key it in, what we're doing is Mark's gonna get some thin set on the board, and then he's gonna use the flat side of his trowel. And you hear that sound? That sound is critical. Sometimes I ask somebody to key something in, maybe we're working at one of our trainings across the country, and they're doing this little gentle motion, and all they're doing is pushing the thin set around. We want to hear that scraping sound. And what we're making sure that we're doing is embedding. Mark, you're struggling. Let me help you. What's that handle right there behind you? There we go. Now you can be a little bit more comfortable, less strain on your wrist and your hands and your shoulders. Get on out there, and now you're not getting dirty either. There we go. What was I talking? I lost track of what I was talking about. Mark distracted me. So he's keying that in. We're using the flat side of our trowel. We want to hear that scraping sound. That lets me know that we're embedding that thin set. It's getting a really good bond to what that surface is. So Mark, let's get some more thin set on the board. And I don't care what it looks like. It doesn't have to be pretty yet. I want you just to spread it around. Just get enough out there and spread it around. And so we're not worried. I think everybody here has probably seen the trial and error video. We're not quite there yet. And if you haven't seen it, YouTube and NTCA, shameless plug here. And we've got some good videos explaining exactly why it's important to do exactly what we're talking about right now. So Mark, it looks like you have enough thin set there to cover a 2 foot by 4 foot area. Are we ready to set tile, Mark?
Let's hit it.
Not quite. We want to make sure that we have nice straight lines. And Mark, we're going to set this tile the long ways this way. So this will be our 4 foot direction. So we want to make sure that we do our trowel lines in the opposite way, the short direction of the tile. So when we're talking about coverage, we want to make sure that we are achieving 80% in a dry area, 95% in a wet area. And to help us do that, we need to trowel straight lines in the short direction. He's taking a break on me. I'm cracking the whip too hard, I guess. So go ahead.
Matt, the first thing I want to start out with doing this, I want to start out with a little bit of mortar on my trowel. I might actually have a little bit much there. If I don't start out with that, when I hit the teeth of my trowel into the substrate, I'm just going to pull this mortar away from where I want it. And that would be, I'm looking to be as efficient as possible. I don't want to go back and back and back and back, right? Now, a trowel like this is designed to be held in the range of about 45-degree angle, okay? And what is a trowel? A trowel is nothing more than a gauge. It's a gauge for our adhesive. So manufacturers design them and test them to be held right at about that 45-degree angle. And I need to maintain that angle consistently. If I lower or increase the angle, I can get more or less adhesive under the tile. And you know what I'm going to have? When I set that tile on my very flat substrate, and maybe even a level substrate, it might be set out of plane. And it will certainly be set out of plane with the tile that goes next to it, and I'll end up with lippage. Horrible thing to have happen. So I've got this set. I'm going to reach out here, but it's a hard thing to reach that far. I'm going to bring in this tool, place it here. Now that puts me in a better position. And as I bring my trowel across, I'm going to bring my whole body, my hinge point will be back here. I'm going to do my best not to move any of these joints, so I maintain a 45-degree angle. Here I go.
So Mark has an advantage right now by using the tool that's in his left hand, this handle. He's able to stretch out and keep that 45-degree angle. And what you'll notice with Mark right now, his elbow and his wrist are locked. Now, if you're setting 6x6, 8x8, 12x12, you're working directly right in front of you. It's easy to hold that 45-degree angle. But we're not setting much of that tile today in 2024. We're stretching. And what happens is when we stretch out, you're not at that 45-degree angle, and then you pull and you bend your elbow and you bend your wrist, you're going from a 15-degree angle to an 85-degree angle. That means that you started with a lot less thin set, and then when you come here towards your body, you've got a lot more thin set, correct?
Correct.
Well, what happens when you go to the next tile and you do it all over again? Every tile's set on a slant, and now we're dealing with lippage problems. So holding that consistent 45-degree angle is really, really critical.
You know what? This is a presentation about handles for tile, and we paused for a few minutes to go over that. We travel the country trying to teach and reteach people what a trowel is. It's a gauge, about different types of trowels, different types of gauges, and how to combine them with the correct adhesive, or thin set in this case, a mortar. And the reason we do that is because we see a lot of problems. A lot of people don't really understand the process of how to get this done, even though they've been tiling for a very long time. In this case, we have a 24 by 48 tile, right, Matt?
Correct.
And what kind of adhesive did we select?
We've got an ANSI 118.15. So I'm going to pass this to you, and I've got handles ready to go on that for you, Mark.
Okay.
And I'm going to talk briefly about the 118.15. One of the features of this thin set, I got you a selection. Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah.
I figured we're talking handles. You might need some help.
Okay.
So 118.15. One of the characteristics of that thin set is something called thixotropic. And what thixotropic is when we add vibration. That could be shifting the tile with our hands. You'll see some guys beating on the tile. We've got some special tools that will add in vibration. And what thixotropic means is that thin set, when we add that vibration, our ridges that are standing up, they will turn more fluid and they will be allowed to collapse easier. Okay, and that helps us remove the air from underneath of our tile and allow us to get better coverage. The required coverage, right? We want 80% in the dry area, 95% in the wet area. So when we're setting bigger tile and we need the handles, right, we're doing everything that we can to our advantage. So Mark selected the right trowel for the job. We've selected the right thin set for the job. We're doing everything that we can to possibly help get that good coverage. Okay, so Mark, get in position, and I want both of you to grab an end of that tile and come over and be ready to set this.
Matt, with this size of tile, should we consider keying in the back of the tile?
We should.
Doing some flat back troweling?
We should. Let's spin it around, and maybe Alex can help you hold that.
Okay.
And we should back butter, but Mark,
you got
maybe
that? How about Alex? Why don't you take that sponge there, Alex? Give it a little bit of a just dampness, just in case there might be some substances here. that could be a bond breaker? Hit that lightly for us.
So the same thing that we did with wiping down our substrate, right? One of the things that we were doing was wiping the dust off and giving it a drink. Well, this is porcelain. It doesn't need a drink, but we still got to make sure that we remove any dust, and then we don't want to install a wet tile. So we're going to dry it off with a rag as well. And now we're probably ready, it looks like. We're going to go ahead and
in for us.
back butter that.
Flat back trolling?
Back butter that tile. And again, we're going to do the same thing that we did on our substrate. We're going to use the flat side of our trowel. We want to hear that sound, and we are essentially keying in, but now it's on the back side of the tile, and this is allowing us to get a better bond. And so this practice right here, people think that, well, it's going to help us get really good coverage. This is more about the transfer and the bond than it is the coverage. The selection of the thin set and the selection of the trowel is where we're going to get a lot of the help with the coverage. But we're going to make sure that we get all the way out. You notice that Alex is getting right out there to the corners and the edges.
Why is that important, Matt?
Well, what's the weakest point of a tile? The corners and the edges. So we want to make sure that we get really good coverage, including when we're back buttering a tile. We want to make sure that we're getting good coverage from on the edges and the corners.
So one of the cool things, Matt, about these really big tiles is that they're super fast to install, and we can charge a lot less money because of that.
Wrong. You sound like some of my homeowners all of a sudden. So we all know, right, that just because it's a bigger tile does not make it any faster. It probably realistically slows us down a lot of the time. And part of why it slows us down is that our substrate requirements are different. So if we're installing a 12 by 12, we need to be flat, but we only need to be flat within 1/4 of an inch and 10 feet. Once we move 24 and bigger, now we're within 1/8 of an inch and 10 feet. And I don't know about down here in Georgia or where you're from, but where I live in North Carolina, I'm not finding anything that's within 1/8 of an inch and 10 feet. So that means that there's some prep work that needs to be done before we ever do a big tile.
Are you ready for us to set this?
I'm ready.
So it's been a few minutes. You've been rambling on endlessly. And in that time, we still have transfer.
We still have transfer. So another one of the characteristics of that ANSI 118.15 is that it has an extended open life. We got more. That means right now, after we spread the mortar, the thin set, it's still good. And we need that extra time because, like Mark said, I'm talking a lot. And we had to spread the thin set, then back butter the tile, but we're still good. I can touch the mortar and still get plenty on my finger. So that's something that the bigger the tile gets, the more I want to be conscious of that and pay attention.
Got it.
Clean up your work area there just a little bit. Now what we're going to do, this is a kind of a common mistake that I see, especially on social media. But when we're getting ready to set a very large tile, we want to make sure that we're doing it very precisely. This is not the time to be in a hurry. Okay, so now, and again, the reason I'm talking about this is we got to get that coverage. And the way we get that coverage is the air has to come out from underneath of the tile. So if we were to set that tile down, roll that tile on its corner and lay it on the 4-foot direction. Now bring it up and set it right on the edge of that board for me. If we were to set it down in those trowel lines and drop it over, what we're doing by setting it down on its edge and letting it drop, we're creating a dam. That air is going to be trapped in there, and the only way for it to get out is to travel 24 inches this way. So we don't want to drop tile from its edge and let it lay flat. So what we want to do is we want to lift it flat right over top, and we're going to come down. And the goal is for all 4 corners to touch all at the same time. And then the air that's in the middle of that tile, now it only has to travel 12 inches in each direction.
Okay, let's get this thing set.
Okay, so straight up and then flat, hovering over top of the thin set.
Come
on up a little bit. We want to go straight down. There we go. Come on up a little bit. We've got to work as a team here.
I'll count and we'll lower it down. 1, 2, 3.
There we go. That's what we want to see. Now think about this. If you're working by yourself with a 24 by 48, that's getting pretty hard to stretch and do that. I don't know about you, but my shoulders can't take doing that anymore. I need a helper. Once I get to a size this big, and it's not that I physically can't do it, but I physically can't do it and get coverage. Right? I could do it, but it's going to be a bear to get coverage. So now that we're removing this, let's pick one handle, one suction cup. We're going to wait on that for a second. Give me another suction cup.
Matt, I think we're close on time.
Oh, we're close on time.
Yep.
Let's vibrate. So this is another type of suction cup. It's got a plastic ring on it, which allows this suction cup to slide on the tile. And then we're adding that vibration that I was talking about earlier, and we are activating those thixotropic properties in that 118.15 mortar. And that thin set is now turning fluid. The air is being released. And what you saw was Mark started in the middle of that tile, and we're working the air out from the center in both directions. We wouldn't want to start on one edge and create another dam. So I think that's all we got.
That's all we got.
That's all we got. I want to thank you guys very much. Come hang out, check us out at the booth that's directly behind you, 7914, straight back till you hit the wall almost.
Thanks to Alex Ness.
Thanks, Alex.
Everybody give it up for our volunteer Alex.